Hi, am I on the air?
Yep.
Fuck.
Thanks.
I've been in the danger zone.
He got a bath.
Minus 5 stars.
Mango.
Huh? Yeah, we got for you.
Jeff Harvey.
How much is a Skyway?
Play.
We'll play 21.
Fuck him.
Well, what is going down, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Am I Still on the Air? The revamped spin-off show of Am I on the Air? We brought the show back a couple weeks ago with the X-Men Days of Future Past spoiler review, and it was a nice big hit, and I got a lot of good feedback on it. And, I decided pretty much moving forward that for Am I Still on the Air, I think I'm going to leave it as a new spoiler-type movie review show. It makes the most sense, instead of me just doing normal movie reviews, which I did last summer on this show, which pretty much I did on the regular show anyway. It makes a lot more sense to be able to have this as an open forum to come on and talk about a movie in its whole without having to hold anything back for the people that did see it, want to hear about it, maybe get some opinions on it. And maybe there's some people that are thinking about seeing it and they don't care about spoilers and they want to get a better feel for a film. So definitely decided moving forward, Am I Still on the Air will be your hub for spoiler reviews. And I'm happy to be joined once again by Geeky Pat, who joined me on the X-Men Days of Future Past special. I know Peeps the Geek is he's a little sad that he's not a part of this tonight, and that's his fault. I invited him to the movie and he flaked out, so we have to move on now without him. So once again, happy to have on from This Week with the Geek, also available on Red Dragons Radio, Mr. Geeky Pat himself. What up?
Hey, thanks for having me, Don.
Of course, man. We had a great time on the X-Men spoiler review. So I saw this movie yesterday, and I think you went to the showing right after mine.
Yes.
We both saw right after. We both saw the IMAX 3D version, and both loved it. So here we are, man. We set it up, and we said, let's talk about it. So let's talk first impressions, really, going around first, and I'll kick it off. Basically, this movie was awesome. Straight, plain and simple. Really, really good summer blockbuster popcorn flick. And I'm a little bummed at the box office. If you listened to the show last night, my Am I on the Air special, last night's show was download, listen, repeat, which was in line with this movie right here, Edge of Tomorrow. The marketing of this movie wasn't all that hot, and I know there's a lot of people that were kind of hesitant to go see it. They said, there was a lot of people that didn't really care for Oblivion. I actually liked Oblivion, so I'm not going to knock that, but I've heard a ton of people say that they felt that the trailer for this reminded them of Oblivion, and they didn't care for Oblivion, so they instantly wrote this film off. And that's not cool. It's not fair to do, because this really has nothing to do with what Oblivion was. This film is directed by Doug Lineman, who did Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He did the original Bourne Identity movie. He did Jumper. So, he's got some good films to his credit. He knows how to juggle some comedic aspects to the film as well, which is actually really, really cool. If you saw Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you know what I'm talking about. This film, of course, mainly stars Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, which I love Emily Blunt. I'm a big Tom Cruise fan. I mean, the guy gets a really bad rep for some reason ever since the whole jumping on the couch thing, proclaiming his love. And I don't know why. I mean, like just because of that, so many people were like, he's a fruitcake, and some people don't like him anymore. One thing you can't deny is that the dude's an amazing actor, and there's not many movies of his that I would come out and be like, yeah, that wasn't any good. He is always top-notch. He's always good, and I thought he was exceptionally good in this film. It also stars Brendan Gleeson. You have Bill Paxton, who was awesome. He was the Master Sergeant that kept, introducing himself to him every time he looped, and then there's just a bunch of little just side characters after that. But overall, this was a very, very fun movie. So let me kind of just give a premise here. Basically, Tom Cruise's character in the film, he is the public face of the military. He plays a character named Cage, and he is the guy that is going on CNN and Fox News and everything. And he's the guy that says, hey, everything's cool. We got the war under control, and you should come. We should recruit you, and you should come to the military and help us fight this war. And the funny thing about his character in the beginning of the film is that he is actually pretty much a wuss. he took this role in the military to not fight on the front lines, and he got lucky, and he's a major in the military, which is a pretty damn high rank, but he's only a
Very
major.
high.
Yeah, oh, of course. I was a major in ROTC in high school, so I know how hard it is to get up to that. And he gets summoned to a new CO's office in the beginning of the film, who tells him, tomorrow morning you're going to be front line when we hit the beach and we do this war. Now, basically, we're under alien invasion and they're wiping everybody out. And he's like, no, I'm not a, I don't fight in the wars. That's not me. And the CEO's like, yeah, it's going to be you. I need you to report first thing in the morning. You'll keep your rank and everything, but we need you to report from the beach and help us fight the war. And he tries to weasel his way out of it. It doesn't work. He ends up getting arrested, and he wakes up pretty much ready to go to war. And he gets thrown with the J Squad, who is kind of the bunch of losers and misfits on the base, and they hit the beach. And if you've seen the trailer, there's a really cool scene where they're in these helicarriers, and the floor opens up and their feet are dangling, and they hit this release lever, and it just kind of shoots them down to the beach, and his safety's on, and he's trying to just dodge getting killed. And you see a member of J Squad get flattened by a plane, and you see all these people just getting killed and killed and killed and killed, and it's a massacre. And you get your first kind of glimpse of the aliens, and I gotta say, man, I love the marketing aspect of not showing us the aliens, because my first instinct of these aliens from the previews were that they were like the squiddies from the Matrix movies. And, because that's what it looks like, because they move so fast, they look like those squids. And that's not what they were. I mean, they did have kind of tentacle type things, but they were kind of like wolf looking, but very alien, menacing. I thought they were really, really cool. And basically, Tom Cruise's character sees Emily Blunt's character die, and then he goes face to face with a different looking, what they call them in the movie is mimics, and he gets faced with a big blue looking one, which you later find out is the Omega, it's one of the rare 1 in 9 million kind of species, and he ends up killing it somehow. He takes out a claymore and he ends up blowing it up. And the blood of the mimic drips onto him, and it's kind of like acid, and he ends up dying. But the mimic's blood seeps into his skin and everything. It's a really cool looking scene. And then he wakes up, and it's the same scene all over again, where he's at the bunker, and then he meets J Squad, and they go through that whole thing again with Bill Paxton, and he's like, what the hell's going on? This is really weird. And then he meets, as he goes through the day again, and he sees Emily Blunt's character die again, he starts to repeat, and then he starts trying to change things. And he saves Emily Blunt at one point, and she understands what he's doing, and she says, when you wake up, come find me. And so she dies, he dies, and then he goes and finds her, explains everything. You find out that she used to have that power as well, but if you get a blood transfusion or any kind of mixed match of blood, you lose the power. And that's what happened to her, and she lost the power. So she knows what's going on. So she starts training Tom Cruise, because like we said, he's like a wuss in the movie, hasn't done anything, and she's teaching him how to fight, how to become a weapon, and they need to work together to get to basically the nest of where these aliens come from. And if they blow that up, they'll kill, all the different aliens. And that's kind of the gist of it. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail, but I love the story of it. I thought the looping was awesome, and my first general impression of this was just outstanding. So, Pat, what was your first just general impression of the film, kind of walking out of it?
Well, I didn't know what I was going to see going in. I was excited. Actually, I was one of the few people who watched the trailer probably and thought, "Oh, this is going to be awesome." But I liked Oblivion, so maybe that's why.
Exactly. See.
But yeah, you know what? I mean, this for science fiction, it wasn't so far in the future. It was hard for me to suspend disbelief, and it was far enough still in the future that the stuff that they used, all the gear and stuff that they used, was plausible. And so I really liked it. I mean, even the way they explained how the story took place and unfolded, and the way they did it with the aliens, and that scene where that blood mixes with his, and he's all like getting all ripped up by the blood, or I don't know if it was the explosion, but whatever. It was like probably the coolest scene in a science fiction movie where there's like a transformation like that I've seen in a while. I like the detail of the movie. Like, I don't know if you noticed, like in the exoskeletons that they wore and stuff, that like everything had a purpose. Even like where the yellow handles were when they unhooked things, they had a CamelBak, because when you get issued stuff in the military and you go to war, you get a CamelBak. They had like one of those water CamelBak lines to the side. They never used it in the movie that I could tell, but it was there. The weapons, what's that?
Oh, I was just agreeing. That's cool. That was a good observation. I didn't see that.
Yeah, and the armor was all practical. It wasn't like, well, this is kind of just cool looking, and it was really cool the way the weapons worked, and even her sword. Remember that sword? It was like all jury rigged from like, I don't know, it looks like a helicopter propeller and a handle, and it looked sweet. The battle scenes, I could say that when it happened, it was hectic and stressful, especially since, like you said, with the aliens. I didn't know what to expect with the aliens because, again, I saw the same thing you did, and you're right, they look just like those things from Matrix. So I thought that was going to be kind of a flying object that just crashes down and kills everybody. But when the first one actually came out and like stood up on its legs or its tentacles, whatever they are, and then opened its mouth at it, and I was like, whoa! It was like so blown away. I don't know. It was just a good movie.
Yeah, the creatures really blew me away, and I mean, just the way they moved was so sick, because they'd start twirling, and they could just be like, bzz, 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 like all over the place, like so fast, and I was just like, holy crap, and especially like the big Omega, like that big blue one was so cool looking.
Oh, yeah,
it was so awesome, and then it's like. So in the movie, Emily Blunt, she starts talking about, have you had the visions yet? And he's like, what visions? And she says, eventually, like, you kind of connect to the creature, and then you'll get visions, and you should be able to see where, like, that nest was. And so he finally does have the vision, and so after failed attempt after failed attempt after failed attempt, and he really starts to gain, like, a love for Emily Blunt's character, so he doesn't want to keep witnessing her die every day. He ends up kind of changing the plan, and he just goes into the war by himself. He never addresses Emily Blunt. He goes straight to the dam where he saw the vision of where the nest was, and he gets there, and once again, the nest isn't there. It's like a trap. The aliens knew he was coming. He gets face to face with one of the regular mimics, and then the Omega one again, coming after him, and he ends up having to, kill himself basically to kind of get out of there and reset. And that was really, really cool. I liked the twist of it, that it wasn't just as simple as follow whatever's in the dream, and. The whole training sequence was great. I mean, I really, really liked the humor in this film. It's just, that was such a plus side to this, of how his character was, how he interacts with J-Squad, and how each iteration of when he wakes up, he kind of tries something a little bit different. And then when he's trying to sneak over to see Emily Blunt's character, he has to, do different things. And there's a scene in one where he causes everybody to have to do push-ups, and the trucks come rolling by, and he tries to roll underneath the truck real fast, and the truck runs him over and kills him. And it was like, holy shit! Like, there was just moments like that where I laughed out loud, and I was like, I did not see that coming, you know? Like, because you think, like, even though he was going to roll underneath it, you just assume it's going to work because it's a movie. And then, like, it's all clunk, and he just gets run over, and you're like, oh my god, that's crazy. And, you know, it was just so cool moments like that of, you know, like, oh, I broke my back, and then she shoots him, you know, oh, I broke my leg, I can still feel my toes, she shoots him, you know, and it's just, there's the part when they hit the farm, you know, and he warns her, like, don't fly the helicopter, I've been here before, the mimics are going to come, you're going to die. And stupidly enough, she still gets in the fucking helicopter and tries to take off.
I didn't get that.
Which I don't understand. Like, you know the guy has this power, and he's telling you, I've seen this, so, like, why would you do that? And, you know, she's dying, and he's holding her hand, and you see, like, 100 mimics in the background just like just spinning, coming at the barn, and then he's dead and he wakes up again, and it's just like, holy crap. Like, like I said, the editing is what really made this, because it's like, for a movie that could have been so repetitive, they just showed so many different angles and aspects and different takes on like the beach war. I mean, I could have rewatched that beach scene over and over and over again. I could have taken 3 hours of just like seeing him drop from the, you know, being in the plane blows up, he drops out and releases and starts fighting on the beach. I thought that beach scene was an amazing piece of action. And you know, like I said, it just, all those moments were like great. Like, any standouts for you that we didn't mention that you loved, the training sequence and just like all of that with J Squad and everything?
Well, you covered a lot of it, but here's the situation too. Like, every time he died, he never got used to it. Like, he didn't like it. Like, when he woke up, it was always like, ah, you know, he always like, like, it sucked every time. It wasn't like, you
on
know,
your feet, maggot.
yeah, it sucked every time, and it became tedious every time, and I think ultimately that's how it would be. You still wouldn't want to die. You still wouldn't want to get shot in the head. It's still not a good experience, you know. And he never got used to it. So that was kind of a cool little aspect that they added to it. You know, J Squad is a whole other thing too. I mean, when you first meet them, I'm thinking, what a bunch of losers. But really, in the end, they're not. They're just, they know they're going to die. They know they're going to go to war. They're going to have as much fun, as much rebellion as possible, because they're going to this war, right? So, but in the end, at the end scenes, they all start sacrificing themselves, and they all go on this mission they don't have to go on to stop the not the monster, but the queen, whatever, right? The big dog at the end.
Yeah.
And they actually like stand together, and they're actually like soldiers, and you actually see a side of them that's different than when you first started. I think Tom Cruise's character starts off that way. First, he's all like, I do this, so I don't have to go do that, right? He's like all trying to get out of going to war. He even tries to blackmail the general.
Which I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't want me telling everybody that it's your fault that all these people died, right?
And then that's when they kind of screw him out of being a major, and they wake up as which is really the only problem I have with the movie. Out of all the stuff in this movie, you would think I'd have all kinds of problems. But really, the only problem I have is we talked about this, he shows up on this island, and they're all like, we know that you've tried to impersonate an officer, but you're going to war private. Like, nobody recognizes him, but the whole first 3 minutes of the film is him on television. So
yeah, let's talk a little bit of negatives, and there's not much, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But I mean, you know, that is probably the biggest negative that I had for the film, and you agree. And exactly like you just said, the movie opens with about a 5-minute montage of all these news programs talking about the alien invasion and showing like when these, you know, meteors crashed on Earth and all this stuff, and the one person on all these channels talking for the military is Tom Cruise's character. And then he tries to blackmail the head guy, and then he gets arrested, he gets tased, and then wakes up, you know, on the island or whatever, on the base. And that's where kind of a lot of the loops start, is that, you know, like, wait, on your feet, maggot, like that whole thing. And exactly, that's the whole thing, is Bill Paxton's character has a note in his pocket that says Tom Cruise's character is a deserter, and he's impersonating a major, and he's just a private that's trying to avoid going to war. And no one not a single person on this base recognizes Tom Cruise's character, which is just the biggest stretch of the imagination possible, because you can't have somebody that's the public figure of the military and not any, Tom Cruise's character even says in one part, like, you wouldn't even have all these recruits if it wasn't for me, because he did such a good job as a PR guy. And none of the, the recruits or anybody on this base, and this is a big base that has thousands of people on it, and no one recognizes him. Little bit of a stretch. So,
yeah, it was definitely probably the hardest thing for me to disbelieve is that I suspended disbelief on aliens invasions, on armored weapons, on dying over and over. You think those would be the things you'd have the problems with, and all that seemed very plausible. It was very natural. And then you get when that scene happened the first time, I thought, no, BS. It was like the first time and the only time really in the movie I go, no, just stop. So that says a lot about this movie in a way, because you would think with time travel, which basically what it is, going back in time and stuff, that there would be a lot of issues, a lot of things that could cause problems like continuity problems. But really, they did a really good. I think you're right. The editing of it did a really good job. Like, for example, they made her in the beginning of the movie seem like this legendary god she's painted on buses and posters and walls, and she's in commercials and she's like doing yoga in the middle of this like training simulator that will kill you if you step over it, and then by the end of the movie she kind of seems a little less of a badass as he does. He seems like more of a badass at the end of the movie. I mean, there's that one scene, which is one of my favorite scenes, where, remember, to everybody else, it's still day one. They don't even know him. He just put on this stuff, and he's running around them, shooting everything, and then, killing everybody. And he meets up with her, and they're killing all these people, and Bill Paxton's character and the two other scrubs from J Company's like, sir, isn't that the new recruit?
Yeah, exactly. Holy crap. So keeping on with the negatives, there's a couple other things I wanted to point out. Another part that kind of drove me crazy was when they went to the general's office and they needed the thing that he had in his safe, like the neural link or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So if all he needed to do was jam that into his leg, why wouldn't he have done that in the general's office?
Yeah.
Because the first time was funny because he talks about how they've done this a bunch of times, and the general never gives in and never, he's a stubborn man, and he never gives him that piece of equipment. And then finally he gets up, he gets it out the safe, and he says, "Here you go, do what you need to do." And Emily Blunt's like, "So what do we do next?" And he's like, "I don't know. We've never gotten this far before." Right. And that was awesome. And then they walk outside, and of course it's an ambush, and everybody's, ready to freeze. And Emily Blunt shoots Tom Cruise in the head to reset the day again. And then it goes back again to where they get the equipment. They're in the parking garage, and they're trying to escape. And she's like, "Jam it in your leg." So if they already know that he's going to turn on them, and they're basically going to be waiting for an ambush outside, why not go in the office, kill the general, and just take the damn thing after he gives it to him, jam it in his leg in the office, and do what you got to do there? So that was a little bit of I didn't understand why he had to do it in the car, which therefore we know that the car trip leads to the car crash, which therefore he gets the blood transfusion and loses the power. So yeah. I guess we just needed it to get us there. But
well, I mean, yeah, I think it was the MacGuffin, right? It was the thing that transitioned from one scene to the other, and it was written in there. But you're right, it was kind of poorly written in a way too, because the general all of a sudden's on their side. Why would he just call off the ambush at this point? If he believed them enough to open up the safe to give it.
See, I don't ever believe that he believed them. I think he just gave him. That guy was a fucking asshole. He just gave.
He was.
He gave him the equipment to ambush him. It was just like in the beginning of the movie when he said, "I understand, it's cool, you don't have to fight in the war tomorrow." And he's like, "Cool, thanks." And then he opens the door and he goes, "Arrest that man!" And,
true.
So it was the same exact thing. The second he handed him the equipment, I was like, he's gonna fuck him over. Like, I just knew because it felt like the same exact setup from the beginning of the film, which kind of showed that guy's character. So I didn't mind that. It's just like that would have been fine for the first run through, and then when she shot him in the head and it reset again, they should have just did it all right there in the office and never left.
And then shot him in the head again because he would have had that information.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he would have already known what to do, where to go, and they could have just moved the plot ahead.
Yeah. But again, you're right, though. If he didn't do it that way, the ending wouldn't have meant so much, I think.
Right. So basically, going along with the story where we're at right now, I mean, so he gets in a car crash, and he blacks out. And when he wakes up, he's, like, in a hospital, and they've given him the blood transfusion. And this is the exact kind of situation that Emily Blunt told him in the beginning of the movie was what made her lose her powers. And, I like the kind of explanation of that, of like, once you inserted somebody else's blood into it, it kind of like just counteracts it and it just creates like a different flow. So
dilutes
the powers, it dilutes it and the power's just not there anymore. So I like that explanation. He wakes up, he sees the packs of blood for the transfusion and he's like, oh no. And it was really cool too, the way they did that scene too, because he woke up on the stretcher and his eyes were black.
Yeah, and then they
just slowly just
that was awesome.
Dripped away, and they went back to normal. And I was like, that was a really cool transition of like I've just lost the power kind of thing. And it was cool because Emily Blunt breaks him out, and then they continue on their mission because at this point they know where the hub is. At this point, the nest is underneath the Louvre in London, and so they know where they got to go. They go back. We need some people. They go and they get the J Squad, and they go to make this one last stand against the Mimics. I have a little bit of a beef with the J Squad at the end of the film because they made it seem so much like we need these guys. We can't do it alone. And I didn't feel like the J Squad guys did all that much in the end of the film. I felt like they, other than like the sacrifice with like blowing up the tanker, I think like the rest of them got like wiped out super quick.
Right off.
And it was like they really didn't do much if you really look back at it. So that was kind of a little bit of a letdown because there's just more that could have been done with that. And so they get to the Louvre, and him and Emily Blunt are trying to make their way, and he ends up getting pretty hurt. Like his leg, I think his leg is sprained or something like that. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna draw the mimic to me, and you go plant the bombs. And Emily Blunt ends up, taking the bombs and saying, no, I'll be the distraction because she was okay and he was hurt. So she goes, and basically there's one of those big Omega blue looking mimics there that starts chasing her. And while that mimic's distracted, Tom Cruise runs through the water because the nest is underneath the water, and he jumps in the water, and he's got all these grenades ready to go. And this is a little bit of a beef that I have too on the negative side, was so the Omega kills Emily Blunt and then runs over and jumps in the water after Tom Cruise. Now, Tom Cruise is swimming really slow at this point because he's hurt.
Very slow.
Very slow because he's hurt. And you've seen how fast these fucking things move in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like, that thing jumped in the water and was like doing its little spinny thing, and it's blasting through pieces of concrete and everything, and it still couldn't reach fucking Tom Cruise quick enough. So I thought that was a little bit of a stretch because that thing should have got to him in like 2 seconds. And so he ends up getting pretty close to the nest, and the mimic shoots one of its tentacles through Tom Cruise's chest and starts to basically kills him at this point, and then he drops the grenades. The grenades just happen to drift and fall completely into the nest, and Tom Cruise's body floats around, and the mimic is kind of like, rah, like over him, and he opens his hand, and you see like the 5 pins of the grenades kind of float away, and then boom, the nest blows up, and everything gets wiped out. And then you see the outside scene, and you see all the other mimics just kind of start dropping. They all just immediately die.
All Avenger style.
Yeah, exactly. In Independence Day, like everything, like you kill the main one, and they all die. And then it goes back under the water, and it shows, Tom Cruise's body's floating there in the water. He's dead, and the blood from the mimic and the nest thing coats his body, and then all of a sudden, He wakes up again, but it's not the part that he's been waking up at in the entire film. It's actually the first time we meet his character in the very beginning of the film, when he's still the major and he's going in for that meeting with the general. So the helicopter lands and he's all the way back there at this point. And then he sees on the news that basically the war in London has been won, all the mimics are dead, and that basically the war will now continue in these other areas. And Tom Cruise's character goes and finds Emily Blunt. He goes back to the base, finds Emily Blunt. She and it was cool to see him walk back into this base with his rank. Because everybody was,
it was different.
Standing at attention and getting out of his way. And then he walks up to Emily Blunt, and the whole movie, every time he walked up to her, she was like, "What do you want?" And then, this time he walks up and she's like, "Yes, can I help you?" And he just smiles, and then fade to black, the movie ends. So I know some, I saw the movie with both of my brother-in-laws, and they felt it was a cop-out that he lived in the end. And I can kind of understand that. I mean, he probably should have died, but I think for franchise potential, you got to kind of leave the door open. What I assumed from it was, if you really listen to the news article, when he woke up at the very end, and they were talking about how, London was saved and all this stuff, and you see that he still did make an impact, and he killed that one big Omega, that he did change the course of events. But they do mention that there's obviously several other places that are still under attack. And I felt that giving him that power again, and maybe his power is now even tuned to a whole nother level, is what I was kind of thinking, to where maybe he can control what spot in time he can go back to now. Because of the fact that he was encompassed with it by that nest, and it was just so much of it, that I think he might have an even bigger kind of time warp travel power now. And I think if they do end up moving forward and doing a second one of these, he could be leading the war moving forward. And, if he dies at any points, he could just choose to be I'm going to go back to this page, and I'm going to go back to this spot. And kind of I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I know this is based on a graphic novel, so I'm curious to know if that's what his character does in the book. Did he die, or does he inherit the ultimate power? Because in my mind, I feel that's what it is now, is that he's got the ultimate control of this time travel power. That he absorbed from the end, which leaves the door open for some really cool shit if they decide to move on with other films in this series.
Well, I mean, the way that they did the ending scene, and the way it was it wasn't like before where the blood just kind of got all over his face and he started to, this stuff came up at him and started covering him all up, and then by the time it covered his whole face and his eyes turned black again, he woke up at that different scene. So that's why I think what you're saying is very plausible, because he was able to choose, the whole time he was thinking he wished he didn't go to that general and mouth off to him, right? So this is the scene right before he does that. It also talks about they found that energy signature under the Louvre in France in that TV video. So, there's a lot of potential going forward on what's going to happen, and he obviously knows enough of the past now that's all going to be future to him still, when he gets to the beach and all that, what needs to happen and how to kill that thing and all that. So that's definitely a given that that's going to happen. But it makes me wonder, there's a lot of potential going forward for the franchise, even for Bill Paxton's character and all. He was a great character, Bill Paxton's character. That's one thing about this movie that I liked. Getting into what I liked about the movie is every character's progression in the movie. Tom Cruise's was an obvious one, because you saw him go from this coward to the guy who was even at the end, he knew he could die and now he would not come back. He still wanted to go kill this thing. He could have backed out at any time at that point, but he still wanted to go kill this thing. So that shows the progression of his character. And there was that scene, you and me were talking about it, after he's seen her die, after die, he decides, well, first he kind of gets depressed and just doesn't do anything. He goes to London and drinks some beer or something, remember?
That was funny,
and then he finds out that London still gets attacked. And then the next scene he goes in, he doesn't even go see her, remember? He he just leaves and goes to that dam, and the nest isn't there, and he knows she's going to die, and that he's going to, he's just fed up with watching her die because he cares so much about her. And you can start to see this relationship that he has with her that she's not aware, because every time he dies, it's new to her. That he's not aware that he has this relationship. That's one thing that was sometimes hard for me to grasp, and it wasn't anything of the movies doing. I think it had to do with me, but I had to keep reminding myself, this is the first time that they had this conversation. Or like when he went into the general's office, the guy is like, I didn't think I'd see you again today. It reminded me of the fact that, to me it's like months later, right? But it's really the same day. He just got kicked out and now he shows back up. So, I mean, the movie does a really good job at the character progression of him, but even Emily Blunt's character, even, like, I didn't like Bill Paxton's character as a character. I mean, I liked the way it portrayed him, but he was kind of an ass. You didn't like him, right? But later on, when he's in the battlefield, he kind of lives up to his own hype. He's just like, oh, we're in battle and we're going to be baptized by battle, through the whole thing. Then he gets in there and he's in there working it. He's not like up in the plane going back while they're fighting. He gets the gear on and goes fights too. So you start to really get an understanding of who his character is. And J Squad kind of a little bit the same way. And each character progresses a little differently. Even to the part where he's about to get in this fight. Remember that? He gets in that fight with those one characters, and he knows what's going to happen. And then the fact that guy's like, I didn't mind the push-ups. Remember?
Yeah.
It made me laugh because I kind of liked the character at that point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for a movie where you see the same thing over and they change everything, you still get a lot of character progression, and you still get connected to certain characters more than I thought I would in this kind of movie. I kind of at first thought J Squad was kind of going to be like a throwaway thing. I wasn't going to get connected to them. They weren't important. But they actually became characters of their own throughout the movie. Every time you were on the beach, you noticed them, you saw what was happening to them. Like, there was a scene where he's trying to say that big fat guy doesn't wear pants in the battle or underwear. He, like, free balls it. Every time he did it, and then that time when he's like, I'm just going to go to he doesn't even try to save him, it just lands on him, he just walks by. He's like a different guy,
Yeah, I liked all the little tweaks of that scene where it was like, the first time he lands on the beach, the fat guy's standing there and he's like, we did it, we're on the beach, like, we're going to do this. And then one of the planes just, boom, lands on top of him and kills him. So then the next time Tom Cruise gets back on the beach, he tries to save him, and he like pushes him out the way, but then the plane lands on top of Tom Cruise. And kills him, and then the next time, like, it smashes both of them, and then he finally pushes them out the way, and then like you said, then there's the one part where he doesn't even get Emily Blunt, and he just goes straight to the beach, and he's no nonsense, and you see the big fat guy, and he's doing the same thing, like, we're on the beach, we made it, and he just keeps on walking, and then boom, the plane lands on top of him again, and it was just like the little tweaks just to that one scene. I got such a kick out of.
And each scene was powerful in a different way. And that's one thing this director did really well. Like, there's certain scenes where it's funny, but it's the same scene, but it's different because the outcome is different. He knows a little more going into it, so it's either funny or it's... When he was a different Tom Cruise when he let that guy die, and he's walking, and he leaves Emily Blunt to die on the beach. I mean, each of those scenes were different. It was powerful in a way. And I think, like... The movie kind of made fun of itself in some aspects without having to make fun of itself, like you said with my leg's fine, but I can feel my toes. My leg's broken, I'm sure, if I can feel my toes, we can keep training. And she's like, nope, resetting, pow, right? It was, and
he's like, and then he broke his back in the one scene. He's like, all I can feel are my lips,
He's all,
yeah.
I mean, for a movie that you're basically gonna see the same scenes over and over again, they were always different to me, even though they were familiar. And that's hard to do, I think.
Yeah, and that's what made the beach scene so cool, was because even though it was repeating that same battle, like, they died in different spots every time. Like, there was always like, okay, like, go left, don't go right, and then she goes left and she gets killed. Go right, don't go left, and then she gets killed. Like, like, they were trying different things, and then you constantly, like, see her dead body on the ground, and you see Tom Cruise die in different ways. Like, he saves her, but then he turns around, and then there's another tentacle thing, like, in his face. Like, I mean, there was just so many different so many different aspects of that whole beach scene. That's what I was saying. Like, man, I could take a whole movie of just that beach scene, because it was done so well, and it was done from so many different angles that I kept wanting to see them be like, oh, let's do this again. Let's do this again. I want to see more of this fight.
Yeah.
Because it was such a crazy cool fight. And and you got to think too. Remember that one scene when they finally get past the beach, and then he says, we've already gotten pretty much every car in this field, and the mimics always catch us, and the only two we haven't tried yet is the minivan with the tractor trailer and the other one, and then he says, you go for the van, just make sure you unhook the
Caravan
thing in the back.
Yeah.
And so she's like, all right. And then, of course, she gets in the van and just takes off with the thing still attached. Now, that wasn't the first time they had been on that scene. So, like, doesn't that seem a little weird to you that he made a point to tell her, like, detach the thing and she didn't? But that wasn't the first time that had happened? Because you find out when they hit the barn that they had obviously been there before, when he's doing the whole, like, oh, you like 3 sugars in your coffee. Like, because she's like, wait a minute, how many times have we been here? You know?
Only thing I could think of is because when it did happen, like obviously that thing was in the caravan, and that one not Alpha, but like the normal soldier with all the red instead of blue was in there, and he knew that, or maybe they got away in different vehicles. I don't know. The only thing I could think of is like he was trying to make it sound like they haven't done this before, so that when he got to the barn, he could try to like make it because when he got to the barn, it was a different scene. Like you didn't know if they've been there yet, and then you kind of start to find out when he's making the coffee and stuff that they've been there, and you could tell. I mean, that's another good thing with the chemistry of that scene was you could tell something was off with Tom Cruise. Like he was different. He was too relaxed, and she was too pumped up. We gotta go. We gotta go.
She was very adamant of like, get the keys to the helicopter, and he's like, it's cool. Let's take our time, and like let's just hang out for a little bit, kind of he was trying to delay her getting killed, because he knew as soon as he's like, as soon as you start that helicopter, you're dead, And sure enough, she started it, and those fucking things came flying out.
I had the same problem you did too, because she was like, I don't care how many times I died. I'm like, I'm gonna make it this time. And he's like telling her, we've done this 100 times.
Yeah,
you're not gonna make it.
He's like, I can't save you, no matter how many ways we try this. It just doesn't work.
Even tells her there's one over there and there's like 100 in this field here, and by the time you start that helicopter up, you're going to get ripped apart. The other ones are going to come. There's nothing we can do to stop this. Let's just try to siphon the gas. It's the only thing we haven't tried yet is to walk away. And I didn't understand why she wasn't like, well, what do I got to lose? I mean, if he gets killed, we start over. I mean, I didn't understand what was the...
No, that didn't make any sense, because I would have believed it more if she had never been in his position. But the fact that she knew about that power and she believed it because she had done it before, she should have been listening to everything he was saying. Like, okay, cool. Like, I know you know what you're talking about, so let's try it a different way. She acted in that immediate kind of reaction style of somebody that didn't believe what he was saying. You know? And that was kind of dumb, just based on the way her character was set up.
It was the first time that it seemed odd to me too with their relationship, because every scene up to this, if he said to go left, she tried to go left. I mean, you got to give her credit, because when he meets up with her and gives her the battle plan to go right or left, it's the first time she's hearing it, even though we've seen him tell her 5 times, don't go left, don't go right. I mean, if you told me this intricate battle scene, by the time I got there, I might forget and go left.
Yeah, exactly. Which she did, and then she got killed, So.
But then she gets to this point, and all of a sudden, it's like, nah, I'm just going to do what I want. You don't know what you're talking about. It just didn't seem right, Yeah. That bothered me. But what I did like about the movie was each scene in this movie made me feel something about that scene. It wasn't so much anymore about the environment or the people in it, as say like in a Lord of the Rings movie or a Spider-Man movie. New York didn't really matter as much. It was kind of the backdrop of what was going on. But because you kept visiting these scenes again, each scene I felt something. I was either laughing, or I was touched, or I was angry when the guy, kicked him or whatever, right? I mean, so each scene each scene was like a character on its own. What really describes it the best is when every time he walks into J Squad, the first time the guy walks in and he's like, this is our deserter, and he thinks he's a major, and the guy's like, those aren't officer cufflinks, and he opens up the bed and there's the cards, and he makes them eat the cards, and the next time he comes in it's a little different, and each scene, sometimes it made me laugh, sometimes it was like impressive because he remembered, he's like, your letter's there, whatever, I'm not running away. I mean, you probably could set it up better than me because this is kind of your stick, but that scene itself kind of took on as a character of itself. I felt something every time he was in that scene. Even when it got to a new scene like the caravan, when they got to that hill and all those flags were in the back of all those countries and they're all shredded, and they're looking down on this, like, what's supposed to be this neighborhood, and it's intact, and it's like quiet for like a few seconds, and he goes, yeah, they're all in there and they're going to kill us, and this is what we have. And the way he describes it, and she's listening to him, you still felt the impact, like, and for me, because I didn't know yet, it was the first time they were there until he said that, right? It was like, because we saw him die so many times up to that point, right? And they finally got that far. It was an achievement. That scene was like, hey, we made it off the beach, which I didn't think they were going to be able to do.
Yeah, exactly. They never seemed like they were going to make it off the beach.
Yeah. And again, that wasn't tedious. You would think the way we just described it, like, they're never getting off that beach, but it wasn't tedious. You could watch these same scenes over and over again. So, I mean, my hat's off to the director, because there is so much potential for you to go, oh my gosh, they're on the beach again, or oh my gosh, he's walking into the J Squad's bunk room again. I get it, they were gambling, but each time it took on character that you almost forgot you're watching the same scene. It was like still part of the same flow of what was going on. Even there's a couple times where he just dies, he's waking up, and the guy's like, get up, maggot, that guy.
Yeah.
Even that scene didn't get old,
No, I mean, it was like you wanted it now. Like, every time he was like, on your feet, maggot, like, you just knew it was coming, and it was always that initial setup, and it showed you where the reset point was, and then they kind of jumped ahead, and, I know we talked about this scene earlier today, but the J Squad, speaking of the J Squad thing, but the one real great spot of it was when when Bill Paxton goes to introduce him, and he says, yeah, how's it going? And he runs in there real fast, and he pulls the blanket down over the cards so they don't get busted, and he winks at them, and he's like, how's it going? I'm just, I had a big rough night last night, but everything's cool. I'm not running anywhere. Yeah, like, and he tries to make friends with them real quick, and Bill Paxton's character is looking at him like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, it was just so funny, and just all those moments, and then even on another time when he tells Bill Paxton's character, like, oh, they're playing cards, and then the J Squad's like, oh, that's fucked up, because they felt like he ratted him out, and then he's like, but you're gonna make them eat the cards, aren't you? And then he's like, what? Like, and it was so many different moments of that was just such nice little subtleties that I really, really was impressed by and liked.
I think that's the perfect description. See, in most movies, you're waiting for the scene that leads up to this action movement, or you're looking for the scene that goes here. But this movie is about moments in time, and sometimes, most of the time, they're the same moments, but each moment has a different effect on me as the viewer. Which never read the graphic novel, but it makes me think if it's as good as this, I mean, in the detail of everything, and it has to be precise in moments like that. Like, I noticed the armor detail because I watched the armor over. Watched it get ripped up. Watched it get put on. He has to abandon it. Then the next time he's like, I need 2 clips and 2 batteries, and
Yeah, where's your helmet? It's a distraction. Like,
yeah, exactly. Because he just lived in this armor.
Yeah, because the first 3 times he landed on the beach, the helmet broke, and he ended up having to take it off anyway. So then he finally just says, fuck it. And then they're like, where's your helmet? And he's like, it's a distraction. I don't use one. And they're like, what?
Yeah, and so, I mean, and so there's all the details in the armor, the details in the uniforms. I mean, her armor was kind of really cool. It had all that red paint on it, and this real, like, cool design.
And the sword.
And so, oh, yeah, and the weapons were different, too, weren't they? And that sword, and the way they used it, and it just, the details of the ships and that little punch button. When they were sitting in that punch button, I was like, I bet that's how. I even actually thought, I bet that's how they eject out, because it looked like something. I mean, everything looked functional. Everything looked plausible, like it wasn't so far in the future, but far enough to where this stuff could exist. it's just every moment in the scene had to be right, and because you were living in that scene so often. I don't know how they reset that beach as much as they did to make that movie, because they had, I mean, everybody has to go. Like Bill Paxton literally walks to the same dune, walks to the same place. When they're sitting in those bags, those guys are in the same marks every time, And except for the one time when he runs up to Bill Paxton in the truck, remember? He's all like, "Hey, Sergeant!" But I mean, everything. Because the moment mattered so much in this movie, the acting had to be right, the details, everything had to be right. Even those little training robots, you wouldn't get it at first if you didn't see how the monsters fight, And then those robots made sense, those little training robots, because
right, because
that's how they
all over the place as quick as those things moved. Yeah.
Yeah, and nobody ever walked in there but those two guys. I mean, because it was supposed to be a shooting range, right? It wasn't supposed to be a combat training simulator, because you'll die in there like Tom Cruise did over and over and over again. So, I mean, and like I said, with the acting being so, like, those scenes where he kept waking up and they're like, "Maggot," you could see where it was in his face, like, that sucked, I just died, but now I can go forward. And some days it was like, man, I don't want to get up right now. And other days it was like, I have to get up and go get this over with so I can get back to Emily, right? I forget her character's name, but to Emily Blunt. And so it was just a nod to the audience, because there was just so many moments, and all those moments meant something, even if it was the same exact scene. I really can't say any other movie that was like that. I can't think of any.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was super unique. I thought it was super original. I hear a lot of people make the joke about, it's Groundhog's Day, and it's like, yeah, I mean, in aspects, yes, of course, because of the waking up and doing the same thing over again. But other than that, I thought it was a very original film.
Sure.
It was a unique concept. They don't do sci-fi movies very well anymore. They're kind of few and far between, and this one just knocked it out the park on all levels. So let's start to wrap it up. So I'm going to pass it back to you. I want you to give your final thoughts on it, and just kind of in a whole summarize it, and then give your ranking out of 5 stars.
Yeah, so I think as a whole for sci-fi, because I'm Geeky Pat, I love sci-fis, I think it's something you've never seen before. I can't think of any movie that's like it. So if you're worried about it being like Oblivion or even anything close to what you think it is, I know Elysium had that weird armor on, but it's nothing like those. This movie is a unique, original movie that brings so much to the table. I think even I paid for IMAX, which brings so much more experience, I think, to the movie than if you didn't. But no matter how you see this movie, I think you're going to walk away thinking you're going to buy this Blu-ray or this DVD. If I had to give it a star ranking like you do, I would have to agree with you, 4 to 5. I mean, there's better movies. There definitely was better movies out this year, but this one's just barely not a 5 for me. I mean, that's just how I feel. I mean, being in the military and seeing how that was exciting. Yeah. It was probably a dark horse. Most people aren't expecting it to be as good as it is, and I can't praise it enough. You there, Don?
Yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. I'm talking, and I'm like, "What do you mean? You can hear me?" So yeah, no, this movie is impressing a lot of people, and I'm hoping that it's one that the word of mouth is going to help. Because I don't know anyone that's seen this and didn't like it. And even from a critic standpoint, which, I'm a critic myself to an extent, and I don't agree with major critics very much at all. And this one, just to give you an example, on Rotten Tomatoes right now, it's a 90% fresh. 90% fresh, which is the critics' rating. That is hard to do for a movie like this on Rotten Tomatoes. 90% of critics like this film. I heard earlier today that it's also a film that's been certified as an A+ movie by critics as well. It has a 95% fan rating on Rotten Tomatoes, because they do 2 ratings. They do a fan one and they do critics. 90% critics, 95% fans, which is awesome. If you go to IMDb, this movie has an 8.5 out of 10 overall score. So your proof is right there. I mean, this is a film that across the board people are loving. and I loved myself. I also, like we said, we saw it in IMAX 3D. Definitely recommend you see it in IMAX. I thought the 3D was pretty cool here and there. It wasn't really overall needed. It did accentuate some of the battle scenes, and I thought, like, especially like when the first time he ejects out of the plane and he's getting spun around and everything as he falls to the beach, I thought that looked really, really cool in the 3D.
Yeah.
But IMAX in general, this movie popped and it looks so good, and it's definitely a big movie theater experience type film. So even if you don't see IMAX, you need to see this in the theater. Don't let this be a movie that you're just kind of waiting for Blu-ray or DVD to go watch. You need to see this on the big screen. I'm going to actually bump my rating a little bit. Coming out of the movie, my initial reaction was a 4 out of 5 stars. When I did Am I on the Air last night and I did my spoiler-free review, I said 4 out of 5 stars. And I did a lot of thinking about this. I overanalyze these things too much sometimes, but I thought about it a lot last night, and then when I woke up this morning and on my way to work, I was really thinking about this film. And when I really sit and I think about it, and I say, what could this movie have done better? There's not much. There really, really isn't. And the whole reason why a movie wouldn't be 5 stars is because there's things lacking. And this movie isn't really lacking much. So I'm not going to jump it to 5 stars, and I really hate using half stars, but I'm making an exception on this one, and I'm going to actually change my review to Edge of Tomorrow to 4.5 out of 5 stars, because there really isn't much else you can do to make this a 5-star film. It deserves to be more. It deserves to be more than a 4-star film, because it was better than that. I mean, a 4-star to me it's awesome, and this was a pretty amazing film for what it was doing. And like if I really sit and ponder on this, the only way I could see this as being a 5, and I told you this earlier, was if this was like an R-rated film, and and that's just because I'm a sucker for when there's no holdbacks and there can be a step up in the action, and there could be a little bit more blood and gore and violence going on, and I think that would have suited this movie a little bit better.
Yeah.
Not that it really took anything away for being PG-13. The movie works perfectly. I'm just saying, for me, if this was rated R and it had a little bit more action and violence to it, and hey, maybe Emily Blunt naked, I'm just saying, that would have been a 5-star movie. So it was just teetering on it. So so I have to go 4.5 out of 5 on this. It is definitely probably in my top 5 right now for the year. And I'm excited, man, and I just really hope to get the word out more and more and more to people to go see this and give it a chance, because box office came out yesterday and it was number 3 in its debut weekend, making $29 million. This is a $175 million film, and it's doing really well internationally. It made over $80 million over the weekend internationally, plus the 30 here, so it's a little over $100 million so far. But I'm fingers crossed, hoping that this word of mouth spreads and more people go out and check it out and really support it, and we see it kind of stay up there in that top 5 over the next several weeks in the theater, because it's gotta. Everyone is spreading the love for this movie, so I'm hoping that more and more people that were hesitant are saying, damn, like, I need to check this film out. So I can't recommend it enough. 4 out of 5 for Pat, 4.5 out of 5 for me. Definitely go check out Edge of Tomorrow. And that'll do it, man. We're hitting that hour mark right now, and another great big review for Am I Still on the Air? I'm glad that, we both enjoyed this, and we'll do it again. I don't know what the next movie will be, but we got a couple coming out. I know for sure we're going to have to do a big one for Transformers Age of Extinction, for sure. I'm thinking we might have to do like the Godzilla. We'll go Thursday night, do that first pre-screen in IMAX 3D, sure, and lay that one out. So, and we'll get Peeps the Geek on here too, and thanks again to Geeky Pat. Pat, tell them about This Week with the Geek over on Red Dragons Radio.
Yeah, This Week with the Geek is basically a show where this geek gets to just talk about things that he enjoys and just talk about geeky things, everything from Star Trek to comic books to video games, sports, whatever. I mean, I think that there's enough content out there that I enjoy, that other people enjoy, that we can talk about, and I like to have guests on, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to go over to Red Dragons Radio, that's the best way to reach all of us, or geekypatbroadcasting.com.
All right, sweet. And you can, of course, follow him on Twitter at geeky_pat, and give him a follow, and then check out the show. And pretty much every other week or so is when you're putting out episodes right now?
Yeah, I'm going to try to get 3 times a week probably at this point, because I'm burning off an hour I'm not using. 3 times a month, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, I was like 3 times a week. Damn, you're going to really step your game up there.
No.
But yeah, so check it out, Red Dragons Radio. You can check out This Week with the Geek. You can listen to Am I Still on the Air? Listen to Am I on the Air? For myself, you can follow me on Twitter at DXDonMega. Follow the show at Am I on the Air? And check out our X-Men Days of Future Past review if you haven't checked that out. That's on the Am I Still on the Air page. And of course, listen to last night's brand new edition of Am I on the Air? Sometimes the worst thing about putting out one of these special episodes literally right after I just posted a brand new Am I on the Air is some people just kind of miss it, and then they jump straight to this and they'll miss the new episode. So look for last night's brand new Am I on the Air, the download, listen, repeat episode, which, you know, gives you all the latest and weekly update and news and reviews and everything else in entertainment. So amiontheair.com, of course, is your main hub for that. So thank you once again for tuning in to this special Edge of Tomorrow spoiler review. This has been Am I Still on the Air? And we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Red Dragons!